Getting asked out on the day of the summer festival. How romantic is that? I'm Victoria. I'm currently working as an office clerk in a small precision equipment company. When I was 29, David, 2 years older than me, and also from the same company, asked me out during the 4th of July festivities. County fair, exotic fish display, fireworks, and water balloons. He invited me out that day, and I was smitten with David in his casual Hawaiian shirt. However, this was the beginning of my tragedy. Did I agree to date him because I was swept up in the 4th of July mood? Anyway, from that day on, I was in for a turbulent month. A few days later, on July 8th,
"We're both old enough. Can I introduce you to my parents? I'm seriously thinking about being with you. I want to cherish it."
I was told a lot of words like that. What a sincere person he is. Moved by that, I said, "Thank you. I want to be serious about our relationship too." At that time, I took him as a serious person who was seriously thinking about dating me as a person to introduce to his parents. I was really naive at that time. So, on July 20th, we ended up with a speedy introduction to the parents, bringing gifts and meeting them just 2 weeks after we started dating. It was as fast as a temporary job interview. Everything was going smoothly, in a good way for me at that time, but now I think it was in a bad way. David's parents, who I met, were very nice people. Or so it seemed. "Welcome! Oh, you're even more beautiful than I imagined."
"Oh, you're too good for David."
Both of them came to greet me at the entrance, and "We thought young people might hate boring steak for food, so we bought delicatessen food. Please eat as much as you want." They even treated me to a feast, almost buffet style. I was in a dream. "Thank you for such delicious food." I thanked them with gratitude.
"But Victoria is also good at cooking. Even though we have a company cafeteria, she always brings her own lunch."
He praised me for being homely too. No way, he was watching me that closely? It's kind of embarrassing, but it's nice to have someone who pays attention to the details. At this point, I want to slap the old me. But anyway, I was so excited that even being observed about the lunchbox made me thrilled.
"Haha, she's such a beauty and can cook, and saves money with a lunchbox. She'll make a good wife,"
his father said. "This is it. Get married soon, you guys. We seem to get along with her, David. If you don't get married soon, she'll be taken by someone else. At least register the marriage." The conversation even slid to marriage. Even then, I found myself thinking, I'm loved to the point where people might think I want to get married soon. I was ready to dive headfirst into anything, even if there wasn't a visible opening. "So here goes," David said.
"What do you think? We're both at a good age. We could get along well. I think you're more wonderful than anyone I've dated before, Victoria. I want you to be my wife as soon as possible. I want you to make the lunch you eat in the cafeteria for me too."
Oh, thank you," I replied. Victoria, had so many things to react to. I agreed despite the pink cloudiness of my brain.
"Let's do the wedding later, but how about we register our marriage for now? It's sudden, but what about August 8th? My mother says it's a lucky and auspicious date. My parents say we can live together until we find a new home. Of course, we think living together is just temporary until we find a new home, and after that, it's up to us whether we continue living together or move to a new place. You can bring just the essentials for now, and gradually move the rest of your stuff from your house,"
he proposed. That's how, after a month of dating, I found myself in the whirlwind process of registering our marriage. My father-in-law said on the bright day,
"I'm taking a paid leave. I'll go too."
And even the mother-in-law came along, leading to a large group of us going to the city hall. Then something happened at the city hall. While we were submitting the marriage registration and the female staff member was checking it, David went over to his parents, who were waiting a bit far off. And what conversation did I hear from there? Once the marriage registration is submitted, she's ours.
Now she can't run away. We've got our golden goose.
I couldn't believe my ears. In fact, I doubted them. After all, I couldn't imagine such a conversation from their previous friendly attitude. My in-laws were laughing vulgarly. And then my husband was saying something like,
"Gotta catch 'em all,"
laughing in an equally crude manner. It was a quiet city hall. Their conversation was completely audible to me. The staff member and I looked at each other. Then she glanced at the marriage registration in her hand, then quietly asked me, "What do you want to do?" "Huh?" I asked. "There are no omissions. We can accept it. But what do you want to do?" The staff member quietly moved the documents from her lower desk to the counter between us. "This document decides your life." She said that, then lowered her eyes. I took it and silently put it in my bag. There probably aren't many times when a submitted marriage registration is taken back at the counter, but I would later be grateful for the clerk's quick thinking. When I got home, "All right, Victoria, hand over your checkbook," they said almost as soon as I took off my shoes at the entrance. "Huh?" I was taken aback. "You are now the bride of this house by holding that document earlier. That means you've become our source of income. Come on, quickly." I took a second look at my mother-in-law's face in surprise. The tone of her voice had clearly dropped. It may have been my imagination, but even her facial expression seemed to have changed. Even my father-in-law said,
"Your mother is right. You're our daughter-in-law. You should listen to everything your parents say."
When you're surrounded by everyone, there is no escape. I had no choice but to pull out my savings book with trembling hands. $40,000. Living at home while single, money does pile up, huh?
"For now, let's get some steak today."
They had said before that young people aren't satisfied with just steak. What was that all about? My in-laws gleefully called the steakhouse and ordered the highest grade steak. When the steak arrived, they made me take out my wallet from my bag and snatched it, took out 2 $100 bills, and paid. When the delivery man handed over the food and left, they pulled out all the bills left in the wallet and returned the empty wallet to me, saying, "Here." Huh? I sent a pleading look to my husband, but even my husband said,
"Well, from now on, we share the same wallet. Take care of it. You are good at cooking. From today, you're in charge of my meals and those of my mother and father, and do all the cleaning too."
I felt utterly desperate. David was unrecognizable from the man I knew just earlier today. "The wife can stay in the corner of the house. I've put all of your things from your home there." They threw all of the packages sent from my home into the attic. I hugged the bag with the empty wallet that had all its money taken away from it. Things had turned out disastrously. The steak from earlier didn't taste like anything because I was too terrified. I probably managed to eat only about 2 pieces because I was so scared. I was at a loss, alone in the attic. But the moment I held that bag, I remembered something was in the bag. I dumped out the contents of the bag. It's here. It was the marriage certificate that I decided not to hand over earlier. It was a good thing I didn't hand it over. That was the only sliver of hope for me. I'll definitely use that hope to escape from here. I spent that night in the attic, meticulously plotting. 2 weeks later. "Oh, are we ordering takeout today?" "It's the steak that you and Dad love. I got it 2 weeks ago, too, and you both seem to enjoy it quite a lot." "Well, aren't we lucky to have such a thoughtful daughter-in-law?" It was now assumed that I would pay. Last time, I couldn't eat as they had taken the money from my wallet, but today I am going to eat as much as I want. Just as we were waiting, the steak arrived, and I received the large box. Oh, it seems to be more than last time. The box was one size bigger than the previous one. The reason would be understood later. As we sat around the food, dinner began.
The high-end steak sauce is simply exquisite.
It just melts in your mouth. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were singing praises.
I'm glad to see Mom and Dad enjoying it.
My husband said, acting as if he was being a dutiful son, though the money was not coming from his wallet. Then the doorbell rang. Ding dong! Coming! I answered the door. That's unusual, isn't it? At this time? Must be a courier. I could hear my mother-in-law's voice. Hello there. My mother had arrived. Huh? What? With a puzzled expression as if caught off guard, my in-laws and husband looked on as I invited my mother to the table. I thought I'd have my mom join us for dinner today, especially since it's such high-end steak, I said with a smile. My in-laws and husband seemed perplexed. They didn't know she was invited. I suppose they didn't have a reason to decline, though. Awkwardly, my father-in-law and mother-in-law cleared some space, into which my mother came and sat down. Well, she began as she picked up her utensils while everyone else continued their meals. I brought what I was asked to. Thank you, Mom, I replied. My father-in-law seemed to feel bad.
Oh no, we can't accept this,
he mumbled, probably thinking it was a hostess gift. But what my mother brought out wasn't a gift, but an envelope. I took it, pulled out a piece of paper, and started reading it out loud. I decided to play my trump card. I didn't submit it. Boom! I thrust it in front of the three of them. Seeing it, the three of them opened their mouths in surprise. I said I did not submit the marriage license. I held up the paper lined with red ink taut in both hands. It clearly stated the submission date of August 8th. Why? But we went to the office. I heard my mother-in-law's raspy, strained voice. Because I heard you. Once the marriage license is submitted, she's ours. In the conversation that went, she can't escape now. That's why the office worker stops me from submitting it. Now I'm really glad I stopped. And then, the paper I held taut, I slightly adjusted its position in my hand and ripped it up in front of everyone. Oh! My mother-in-law let out a scream with her mouth still open. The sound of the paper tearing echoed in the room. My mother-in-law's wide-open eyes were vacant and pitiful.
So much money.
My father-in-law also let out a dry voice. I tore the paper into tiny pieces, crumpled it, and stuffed it into my bag. I picked up a piece of steak from the table, put it in my mouth, and savored it before swallowing. These steak bills, I'll leave them here with the other invoices. Let's have our last supper.
Were we tricked?
My husband, no, the man who was now nothing to me, screamed. Then, who's the one who deceived who? A roaring voice shouted back at him. It was my mother. The one who tried to trick my daughter with a marriage license was you. Before you blame others, be ashamed of what you've done. The momentum silenced everyone. My mother continued. It's easy to imagine and horrifying to think that my daughter was being oppressed by you three like this. I made the right choice coming here today. If she had been alone, you three might have forcefully taken the marriage license she had. I'm glad my mother came. I noticed that my hands were trembling slightly. By this point, I was a complete stranger, not only to my in-laws, but also to the man and woman standing over there. My fake in-laws and husband would simply have to accept the harsh reality of the costs for the purchased items they would have to shoulder. All three of them were so disheartened that none of them even felt like eating the steak. But I was in a different mood. I ate as much steak as I could fit into my stomach, making up for what I hadn't eaten previously.
It tasted like victory, and it was absolutely delicious. My mother also ate quite a bit, but there was still leftover steak. Then, "Can we take the leftovers?" my mother asked, pulling out a Tupperware container she had brought with her. I chuckled a bit, thinking that she had planned this from the beginning. "Sure, it would be a waste to leave it here," I responded. I went to fetch my suitcase from the attic room. "Then, goodbye. Thank you for having us for the past 2 weeks," I said as my mother and I got into our car and drove off. "Really, you've had a rough time with this, haven't you?" my mother commented from the car. "We must be more careful. We rashly agreed to your marriage without considering the timing." My mother said that from inside the car. After that, of course, I spread the news of David's and his family's outrageous behavior around the office. Word got to my boss, who was appalled and questioned his character. As a result, he was transferred to our company's only branch office in Kyrgyzstan. It's odd that our only branch is overseas, let alone in Kyrgyzstan, but the country is thriving in precision machinery production, so our company has a branch there. It's a place so far away, it's known as a dead-end job within our company, hence its nickname, Ghost Station. A place where one ceases to exist. With him being sent off to the Ghost Station, he naturally had no ties to me anymore. As for his family, they were unable to pay for the invoices, and despite borrowing money from payday loans, they eventually had to flee in the night. The following year, during the summer festival, I peeked into their property, and it had been turned into a parking lot. "It's a parking lot, huh?" "It sure is a parking lot." I stood there, taking in the sight with my new boyfriend. "Shall we go to the festival?" "Sure." My new boyfriend was just in a t-shirt and jeans, but it's way better than a Hawaiian shirt. Looking forward to the fireworks, I held his hand.